All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for your attendance and your presence here. Um, we are we got a full schedule today. Um, we're gonna learn a few things. We're gonna talk about a few things that might be affecting some of the operations that we have from a state perspective, and get on with a number of items. So, with that,
Oh, want to do roll call? Kelly Bensman,
Here.
Beth Biggins Raymer,
Here.
Jeff DeYonker, Michael Deneen,
here.
Jennifer Fenderbach,
Here.
Marcy Kress,
Here.
Jeff Palmer,
Right.
Brett Snyder, Ryan Winter,
Here.
Alex Bergman, Billy McConville, Paul Wise. Oh, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Just from a perspective of order of operations and things of that nature, we'll get to the status of the appointments and reappointments here in a moment. There are a number of our appointments that have expired. This has happened before. We've just kind of operated under the status quo type situation. I don't think we're doing anything that is out of the ordinary. So, so long as everybody's aware of that, I just wanted to kind of make a point of that. Um, but as we review and approve the minutes, we're doing this. So we're operating a little bit out of bounds, if you will, but nevertheless,
Not first time.
it's not the first time. Probably won't be the last either. So with that, we've got some minutes that got circulated. Anybody have any comments, questions, concerns? Hearing nothing, can we get a motion for approval?
Make a motion to correct Eric's spelling of his name.
Oh, sorry.
You were so close.
I thought we got it everywhere. I will do that.
A motion to approve the minutes of the May 17th, 2023 meeting with the correction of Eric Palmer's name.
Wait a second.
I'll second it.
There you go. Thank you, sir.
Seconded.
Make sure we get that right in the record. So it's spelled right this time
I'll
too.
forward it to you two for signature.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Carries. Thank you. Appointments.
We're still waiting on boards and commissions to get back to us with appointments. It doesn't mean anything. This has happened before. They're busy. We monitor their announcements to see when they come out, so we'll let you know what your appointments are. And Andrew Smith is here. He's kind of our liaison to track stuff, so we've been working together on that. Thank you, Andrew.
With that, let's table the vice chair till we get everybody appointed and get all that stuff done. Next meeting is September the 20th.
Yep, it'll be here. All of our meetings for the rest of the year.
Mr. Sargent is absent.
He's done.
He's done.
Jeff Snyder has taken Steve's place.
Thank you. Letter of thanks for Mr. Sargent.
I was wondering if we wanted to do that. Steve has been in the industry for a very long time and served on here even after retirement. I didn't know if you wanted to let's send him a letter of thank you for his time. We haven't done it for any other members who have left, so I didn't know if it was too unusual to do that, but.
Like to start the tradition.
I think that's a good idea. Maybe we can have something drafted up for next meeting.
Sure.
Something out. EA updates.
We have just a few here. So Michelle Mountjoy, who normally is here to give us an update on Ohio Pay Rule activity, was not able to be here, but she did give a summary of what's going on. So the first rule package that we have is what we call Rule 19. It's the landfill operational rules. We just released those for interested party comment on the 18th. Comments are due on, July 18th. Comments are due on August 18th. We reorganized it into a new chapter, just like we've been doing with a lot of other rules. So if you look on our webpage, which we can get you the address for the interested party comment period, there's the new rules, and then there's what we call a crosswalk, which shows you where the requirements from the old rule are in the new one. So that's all up on our webpage. The scrap tire rules went into effect on June 30th, and there'll be a training webinar on August 8th, and Jeff can help people register. I believe, Jeff, you're probably running that, aren't you? Or maybe that's news to you. Anyhow, if you're interested in it, just let us know and we'll help you get registered. And then up next on our list of things to do are the beneficial use rules. We're up against our 5-year rule review period. We have done our early stakeholder outreach, and we're just currently going through the comments that we got, and then they'll be going into the next phase. So that's the rural activity we have going on right now. If you have any questions about them, just let me know and I'll forward them on to Michelle, who can answer them for you. I'm gonna turn over to Lindsay for just a minute. She has an update on the status of our Swiffer application with US EPA. Lindsay?
So the Swiffer grant work plan is in final review with US EPA. Ohio EPA had meetings with our assigned project officer and our US EPA technical contact. Everything is on schedule for us to start work on October the 1st. The Swiffer grant, if you remember, is to conduct a waste characterization study across Ohio, execute stakeholder engagement, and ultimately develop a state organic management plan. It is a 3-year grant cycle. The total amount requested is $471,126. We did receive an update on the Rio grant, just it's all right to explain that one. In June, we did receive US EPA announced that Ohio EPA's Rio grant application has made it to the next level of review for funding. And they are still on track for final review and grant award announcements. That is a competitive grant to be expected late fall. And Ohio EPA's Rio grant application focused on business recycling and outreach. And let me see, that total amount requested. We were working with solid waste districts and businesses to increase collection of recyclables and improve markets of recycled commodities, and that total project request was $1.38 million. Things are still moving along.
Thank you, Lindsay. Anybody have questions about the grant application at this point? Lindsay has put in a phenomenal amount of work on this so far. You think it's hard to apply for an EPA grant, you should try for a federal one. Yeah, Jennifer.
Lindsay, I do have a question. When the Ohio EPA receives the funds, and I do believe you're going to be receiving those funds, are you considering the number of awards you will be giving out, or will you be using a criteria to judge for the one best and greatest award that you will be giving out?
Referring to contractors to
Yeah.
execute the work plan. So we are in the process with the US federal. We have to follow Ohio, the state of Ohio's procurement requirements. So we're in the process of that. Work cannot start until October 1st. But we will be putting an RFP out for that. And it is through a process through the RFP that we can award a contractor or contractors. So, but it has to follow process.
Thank you.
Next up on our updates, we have Marie Barnett here. She's going to give us a quick update on the grant program. I'm going to share my screen here. You want to run your presentation, Marie?
Just tell you next slide. I only have a couple. Morning, everybody. I just wanted to go over a quick update over the grant program. We made some changes for 2024. We have decided that we're going to open the grant application October 2nd, and it's going to deadline December 1st. So that's a lot different than it has been in the years past. The reason that we did that is because we've been asked to by some entities that do fairs and festivals and those natures. And they weren't always able to meet the deadlines within that June time because a lot of their things started prior to April. So, like in April and May and June, and they weren't allowed to start until July.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so we've decided to move the timeline up. We hope it's not a problem for grantees, but we're gonna give it a try and see how it works. Go ahead. Go up.
There might be a delay.
Here we go. But it will open, as I said, October 2nd. We'll have a webinar kickoff. We have people register for that. We talk about the grant program, talk about eligibility, what types of programs, what types of projects are eligible, what's not eligible, and the dollar amount associated with the request that they would like to propose. The grant deadline will close on December 1st. And the projects will begin April 1st. So again, to let those fairs and festivals and other things, tire amnesty events, maybe, that could start in May instead of right now, they're not allowed to start until after July. So we hope that this will be more convenient for everyone.
This has a huge delay, so I don't.
We kicked off a couple grant rounds ago, the water bottle refilling stations for schools. This grant round, we're going to open it up and make it available to local governments, nonprofits, K through 12 public and private schools, which it was always open to them, colleges and universities, which it was not open to. It's going to be a standalone grant. And what we mean by that is we have a combo grant, which you could apply for more than one project. You could do multiple projects. The water bottle will be by itself. So if they have a tire amnesty event they'd like to do, they'll have to apply twice. And the reason that we're doing that is because the water bottle refilling station has a 0% match. And that's what we had done in the schools in the past. We've given out $1 million to Ohio schools for water bottle refilling stations. And the reason that we did that was because you really have a match because you have to install the station. We don't pay for the installation. We only pay for the equipment. And the reason that we did that was because, a school could have a parent that's a plumber that could do it a lot cheaper than maybe someone else that had to hire out to get that work. So we thought, we'll just pay for the equipment and the match, if you will, is on you, which would be the installation. So that's kind of what we did. Currently it's at $5,000 per school. We're going to raise it to $10,000 per applicant so they could apply for up to $10,000. Last year, and the last two grant rounds, we've had $10,000 per school district because we weren't really sure how many applicants we were going to get. And we didn't want one big, huge school district coming in and going, hey, we need $1 million to do 75 schools. And that would have wiped out the money that we had to award. So we're going to open it up. The main thing is we're hoping it's going to be school buildings, community centers, libraries, parks, those kind of areas. Has to be a public area. It can't just be in your, your conference room in your office is what we're looking for. So we're going to open it up and see what we get. Next, please. Hold it, go up.
Oh, they
Yeah,
did.
Thank you. Generally, we got some additional spending authority. So we'll have $7.5 million to award. We'll have $1 million in scrap tire, and that's at $8.5 million we'll have to award in 2024. So we're really looking forward to, that's probably about $2 million more than we don't normally have. So we're looking forward to that and hoping to get some really good applications. But as far as the scrap tire and the market development goes, we're not really changing a lot of things. We changed it a couple years ago that 100% of the money is at the end. They don't receive any funds until the end of the project once they've completed it, kind of like a reimbursement kind of thing, if you will. We don't like to call it that. Someone explained it. The easiest way to explain it is like a rebate. When you buy something at the grocery store, you have to show your receipt. You have to show that you paid for it and that you purchased it. And that's kind of how the grant works. So we thought that's the best way. A lot of solid waste districts were holding that money for 2 years and they didn't like that. So we kind of thought, hey, this is a good idea. Let's try this. And we've had lots of positive feedbacks for that. But that's pretty much all the updates that we have. Here's a list. Let's switch one more. There's a list. There's a list of our contact information, but we expect to put these timelines out to everybody that's applied in the last 3 years to let them know that it's up and coming in October, because a lot of them are used to it not closing until February. So we want to try to get that word out. So if you know anybody that's interested in applying, please let them know that, the timeline is changing and to reach out to any of us and we can get them that information. Any questions?
This is also applicable to the market development grant.
The timeline?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yep, it'll be all of them.
2 years from that April 1st date then.
Correct. Right now, it currently runs July 1 through June 30th of the next year. And we're gonna have them start in April and they'll run until March of the next year. So, yeah, it's all the programs. Yes, sir.
On the fill stations, is there one particular model that's approved for the?
No, because the reason that we did that was because when we worked with schools, we found they were all different. Everybody had different kinds of water fountains. So that was the other stipulation that we put on there. You pick what works for you. What we asked them to do when they applied was to tell us how many visitors they have, you know, how many people, just kind of get a good idea of how many people we're trying to assist. And that was the other stipulation. They could, whatever fountains you already have, we don't want you to have to replace them if you don't need to replace them. Just put the equipment that works for you. There's LK, there's Oasis, there's a whole bunch of different ones. I was very surprised. We got a lot of, we asked them to submit their invoice, you know, not that invoice, but a quote that they received to do it. People were getting them from Amazon, which I was totally shocked that Amazon sold them, but they say A to Z, that's what they carry, everything from A to Z. And so we had a lot of people purchase them from them, but that's up to them as well. What type of equipment they want to purchase, what they need, what works for them.
Would ice and water combos be considered as well?
You know, we haven't had anybody ask about the ice. I would say, yeah, it's in there. So as long as it's in the equipment,
Wildly popular. Yep.
yeah.
It's the
I
crunch.
know ours gets kind of warm. We have them in the EPA and ice would be kind of nice, but. Ma'am.
There is a funded movement for school systems to test their water and their pipes for lead. Are you requiring that they have that lead certification test first before you will be awarding them a water system?
You know, it's a great question. We threw that around a lot. And what we thought in the very beginning was we kind of didn't want to open that can of worms. And the reason was we didn't want to give a whole bunch of parents, you know, freaking out. This is why they're getting, you know, we thought, no, we're not going to ask. That's really the responsibility of the schools to check that. We're not going to make them do it. You know, if there's another branch of the EPA that does that, or, you know, whether it's state or, you know, federal government, you know, whatever, but we don't ask for that. And we don't look to do that. Now, if something comes down, you know, a year from now and we have to do that, then we will. But right now we do not.
As far as maintenance on the dispensers, is there any monies included for filter replacements, or is it they're on their own?
Just equipment in the very beginning, and we'll give them the 100% upfront. That's why we made it two separate applications, because it was a little bit too hard if you did multiple projects to give you 100% of this, 50% of that, 0%, you know, match. So that's kind of why we kept them separate. That way we can make it fair across the board. We actually did it for schools because a lot of schools don't have any money, and we thought this was the best way to get them to come in and get these fountains. We didn't want to discourage anybody because they didn't have any money. And so we hope that this was a way to do that. And to be honest with you, we've been very successful. We gave out $1 million in 2 grant rounds, which is huge. When it was, you know, because some of them were $3,000 grants. So, you know, that $1 million went a long, long way. And we're really proud of the project. You know, the program. Could it be better? Sure. You know, but we did a lot of research. We looked at other things. I guess during COVID, there was some money that some schools got that they could replace some fountains with, but we found a lot of them that still don't have them. And they're the older schools, to be honest with you, the older buildings. So we're very proud of the program.
Stupid question. I'm sure they wouldn't waste their money, but is there any question of whether or not the school's not scheduled for closure?
You know, we really haven't asked that. We haven't had anybody that's applied. We did open it up to, you know, charter schools are doing it as well. Everybody that's applied that we've given the money to have been in, you know, been around. We do ask them, you know, how long have you been there, that kind of thing, but we
You
don't.
know, a lot of districts have, you know, facilities
We have
management
some that
plan,
close. Yeah.
and they're scheduled for renovation, or they're scheduled for rehab, or they're scheduled for whatever. I doubt they'd go spend money on something that they were gonna turn around and take out, but.
And to be honest with you, this timeline works for them better as well because they're out of school. So a lot of them that got money do it when the schools closed, or during spring break is when they would do it, when there's no traffic in the schools. You know, the kids are gone. So that's the best time for them to do it. So that was another reason that we looked at changing the timeline.
Thank you, Marie.
Thank you.
My
The only,
pleasure.
the only other update we have is that Matt Hiddle is no longer with the planning unit. He took a different job in our division. So for the time being, I'm his contact for his districts until we can get somebody else in-house for that. We're done with EPA updates.
Looks like we have a presentation, hopefully, from Pure Cycle.
Yeah, Chris Alaric from Pure Cycle. He's the vice president of feedstock operations. They have a plant down in Ironton that is accepting polypropylene, and they just began operating. And so we thought it would be interesting to have one and kind of give an overview of their plant. So Chris, take it over.
Hey, thank you so much. Can you guys see the screen all right? Hopefully it came up. All good?
Yeah, we can see it.
All right, sounds good. Well, it's really great to talk to you guys. Just a little bit about my background. I grew up in Elyria, Ohio, so west side of Cleveland. Went to school in Akron and graduated with a mechanical engineering degree. Lived in Hilliard, currently live in Liberty Township in Butler County, and work in Ironton, Ohio. So any chance I get to talk to fellow Buckeyes is good. I've had this open this presentation up a few months ago with Rumpke, and we've really had a lot of updates here in the last few months. So I'm excited to kind of show you what we do. But first of all, just my background with Pure Cycle. I started about 5.5 years ago with the company. Employee number 4, so I've seen it from the ground up. We started as essentially a pilot plant and a technology that was what we thought was groundbreaking. The technology was essentially started from Procter & Gamble. And what we do is we take any type of waste polypropylene. And if you look here on the screen, you'll see kind of on the top, you'll see some yogurt containers, you'll see some to-go containers that are in there. But we take that material and we purify it. So we take out the color, we take out the odor, and we make it into what's considered a pure pellet that now can be reused, and it can go back into virgin applications. It's kind of on par with virgin is what we produce. And we do it in kind of a different way than most people would expect. And that's part of what I want to kind of review with you guys today. But really the background of our process is it's a technology that was developed. Procter & Gamble developed it with the goal of trying to produce more recycled material in the products that they produce. And the technology was started about 7 years ago. The idea is it's a very disruptive technology. It's doing something no one else has done. And what we do is essentially, I like to put it this way, it's a giant washing machine. So we take out the color, the odor, we really don't change anything on the material, but we make it into something that's it's a new polymer that you can go ahead and put into all your original applications that you would have for virgin material. The picture you see here, the little dark material that's around there, that's actually carpet fiber. That was like carpet that you'll see in a commercial location, and we took the backing and the face fiber itself, we densified it, and then we put it into our process and made actually virgin material out of the material. So we started that quite a bit ago. Like I said, I've been there about 5.5 years, so it's been a little bit of a venture to get there, but it's really getting close. And like I said, we're just starting up here in Ironton, Ohio, so we're very close to kind of getting to the next step. What I wanted to kind of tell you what we do and what we don't do. Like I said, people hear chemical recycling a lot, right? And chemical recycling is really meant where they break down the polymer. They take it back to their base conditions, make it into a monomer, and then they build it back up. We are not that. We like to consider ourselves like more of a mechanical recycler or an enhanced mechanical recycler. And what we're using is a solvent technology. And so what we're doing is basically breaking it down and taking out those impurities that happen to be in the system. And we're doing it in a way that's a lot more efficient, a lot more energy efficient, less emissions, less byproducts, those type of things that you would see versus a chemical recycler. And the beauty of what we do is we're actually taking the material that is a waste and making it into an immediate product that you can use and that you can sell. And so that's really where what makes us different, that really drives us kind of to that next level of what we want to do. We mentioned that we're in Ironton, Ohio. Our capacity for the plant is going to be 120 million pounds. So that's quite a bit of material coming in. 60,000 tons, I think, if I convert that over for Jeff that's in the background, since everybody else talks tons, we talk pounds, but 120 million pounds is a good bit of the capacity that we're trying to drive. So just to give you a little bit of background to try to explain the purification process to you, our feedstocks that we can take in, they can do anything from a BOPP film. So let's say if you're getting in your wrap that comes on your soap containers or those type of things, like that type of material is a film. Things like Frito-Lay bags, those type of things are a film of material that we could bring in. Fiber, as I mentioned, could be carpet fiber. Another big one that we see a lot out there that has been usually going overseas are super sacks or FIBC containers. A lot of those type of materials we can bring in, we can shred that, we can make that into, these purified pellets. And then the traditional things that most of us recognize are basically a flake. So your mixed rigid, anything that's going to go through you know, a MRF or any of that type of stuff, a waste management company like Rumpke there, it'll basically take it, we'll take that type of material, then we'll put it through this process. And as I mentioned earlier, what we do is we essentially dissolve all that type of plastic. We dissolve it in, which means it's going to have all the contaminants that you're showing in here, which is all the pretty colors that we put in there. But what we do is we essentially pull out the odor, we extract out the odor, we extract out the oligomers, the kind of the lights that come in the material. And then what we do is once it's dissolved, we have a set of filtering techniques that would pull out the other kind of contaminants. And other contaminants could be other plastics, could be other solids, it could be colorants, those type of things there. And we put it through this filtering process until we're left with just a dissolved polypropylene in with the solvent material that we have. And then we undissolve the polypropylene and we produce it into a pellet. So essentially runs from very dirty material to a nice clean material that can be reused and gone into a virgin application. So that's a little bit of the process. For those that haven't been to Ironton, Ohio, we put this on the map. So just go 23 south from where you're at and you'll run into Ironton eventually. But what this is kind of showing is this is the overall view of the facility that we have going in. And the thing that we really like about this location is we're very close to lots of the big cities. You know, we can pull in from a good location, and we're trying to be a nice central location to be able to pull that in, especially for the Midwest. The company as a whole has broken ground in another location in Augusta, Georgia. So we're kind of looking Midwest and then going to the Southeast first, and then we'll be kind of pushing to the next level as we continue to grow. But really just what does it look like in kind of a very simple artist rendition of the plant. We have about 26 acres in Ironton, Ohio. We repurposed an old Dow Chemical facility. So the Dow Chemical closed about 10 plus years ago. This site, currently American Styrenics is in one corner of the facility. We purchased these 26 acres and we had 3 buildings here, kind of this 2, 5, and 6 area that we've repurposed that were abandoned. We've made that into, you know, our current process. We've added essentially what we called a phase 1 unit or a pilot plant. And then we've added the commercial plant, which I'll show you some pictures here. But just basic concept of how the flow would work is we bring in bales of material that come into this building. We put it through what we call pre-processing. It goes in through some silos, which is WIP. And then we put it through our process where we purify the material. And then it goes out on a rail spur and kind of sends it out. So that's kind of the original overview. But the first thing that we put in here is what we call this phase 1 unit. We call it a feedstock evaluation unit, which is a tad bit too wordy. Most people would understand that as a pilot plant. And this is what it looks like. And our process looks like almost a mini refinery. So what we're doing is essentially melting the material. We're putting it through the process, purifying it, and then taking it out. This all started back in 2019 is when we actually made our first product and our first pellets that were there. And then after we made the first pellets, as most things are, we went out and tried to find additional funding. Very happy that we were able to get a municipal bond from the Port Authority down here. And that's what helped us go ahead and move on to the next phase of the company, which was really building Ironton up. So basically taking that plant, if you look at this area over here that was very abandoned, it is much larger and looks like a real plant now. So this is what it looks like as of April. And really what I want to do is get you to the next level. So what does it look like today? So this is kind of the bird's eye view of running into what our plant looks like. Mentioned before that these are the buildings that were existing that we repurposed, moves into the silos, and then all of this area that you see here has been redone. So this is all the construction that we just completed. Very happy to announce that a month ago, we kind of put our first material in and got our first material out of the process. So we're still going through the commissioning stage right now, but just to give you a perspective of how large it is here, you can see Route 52 on this end and the Ohio River right there. So we are right there at the tail end of Ohio. But just zooming in a little bit on the plant, this is really what we talked about was our feedstock evaluation unit or our pilot plant. This is kind of how it runs. If you look, this does look like essentially a mini refinery of what we're trying to run on here. And then diving in a little bit further, you'll kind of see the view of this was the old building. This is what we call a commons building that basically runs the entire operation of the plant. So as I mentioned before, you know, the process runs, but you have to get material into a state that we can run into the process. So what happens is we're going to take bales of material and hopefully, let me show you the screen. So we take bales of material like a rigid bale or bales of fiber or even film, and we put it through what we call a pre-processing step. And so the pre-processing step essentially sorts, grinds, and washes the material. And what's unique about us is we're not out to make it perfect, right? We're not putting a lot of energy up front to get there because our process is so high tech. We feel very comfortable. We just need to get the initial grime and initial dirt off of the material. But essentially, we can take the bales in, we put it there and make a flake, or we can take things like a film or a fiber or super sack. And what we do is we essentially shred that up. And what we do is we call it densification. So we have what's called an agglomerator, and we make what's kind of a pellet. It's a densified pellet. It just gives it some weight. And that allows us to go ahead and save the material as we go pre-process it. We put it into these silos, and that gives us our buffer inventory as we go ahead and run the plant. So to just give you an idea of what that looks like, is this is kind of what our current operation looks like. We have 2 lines that do essentially films and fiber, and we have 1 line that does rigid material over here. So I'm sure this is a Rumpke bale that I'm breaking up over in this corner. But if you look, we take a number 5 bale here, we break it down, we put it into the system, and then we essentially grind it, we wash it, we float sink out the other contaminants that are in there, and then we send it into the process. So just the kind of basics. This is the front end of the process, and this is what starts really the heart of what we try to do here. So the big key here is how do we get feedstocks, and how broad are we, and what can we take? And so we kind of have a 4-prong approach of what we try to look at. Post-consumer being by far number 1. What we want to focus on is we want to be able to get stuff from households, and we want to make it into new pellets. And that's where we, partner with the post-consumer. We look for number 5 bales. We're exploring different opportunities to take like residual and even kind of 3 through 7 bales that are more of a waste, and try to upgrade those and get those into our system. The second prong that we have is a lot of what we call post-consumer kind of non-curbside. So this is special events. If you look, we're actually partnered with the Cleveland Browns, the Cincinnati Bengals, and a couple of those teams down south. But we're working with them to go ahead and collect the recycled material from the games, get those back, and essentially repurpose that material. We also do special events when it comes to meetings and those type of events that are out there. And we call that our Pure Zero program. And we have a dedicated group and team that focuses how we can improve that opportunity that's out there, because that's a very large stream that really hasn't been tapped in much. And then our third prong of it is essentially post-industrial. This is historically where a lot of the mechanical recyclers had focused on. And a lot of people have gone in and said, hey, how do I take a post-industrial scrap? What can I do to it? What can I make it into? And historically, that has been a gray or a black pellet, right? That's essentially what most people make. It has kind of low value, and you're essentially downgrading the material. And that's where we come in of saying, hey, we're able to take that same material and make it into something brand new and make it essentially a premium product. And then our last piece of the puzzle is things like this, working with partners like, the Ohio EPA, Recycling Partnership, APR, some of the larger advocacy groups, and we really need to promote. Everybody realizes that polypropylene production is in single digits most of the time. I mean, we're lucky to reclaim, 10% of polypropylene that goes out into the market. And that's where we need help to try to get there. Our hope is by putting our company and really growing, that we create that pull. We give people incentives so that communities can say, yes, we know there's a home. And essentially, we want to highlight to you guys that there's a home in Ohio, that we can take this material in, we can repurpose it, and then we can send it to, essentially, consumer goods companies and make it into something new. So that's kind of where we start in the feedstock. The other piece that we tie into is just, we like to focus on kind of the LCA that, as I mentioned earlier, we're almost a glorified washing machine for the material. So you look at greenhouse gases, you look at energy, we're much less. The only thing that we show a little bit is because we do a wash up front, that we're kind of on par when it comes to that. But just the whole concept of what we drive, we recirculate our solvent 100%. So that's a constant loop. Everything we do, we're not breaking it down to the monomer like I talked about earlier. We're essentially just washing out the impurities that come into the process. So we think we have a lot of advantages, both environmentally and also when it comes to the product. And then kind of my last slide, I think I mentioned this when I was giving another presentation, that in the past, things were either black or gray and had an odor to it. And what we were doing, and I think I had on here before, that the future was us making pellets that are clear and pure with non-odor. And what's happened now is we've gotten to the now. The future is now with the company. We're really driving into, like I said, getting it to a commercial scale. We've been producing pellets for, 3.5 years now. pretty consistently. Now we want to get it to a larger scale where we can hopefully impact a lot more than just running it through a pilot plant. So that's essentially my overall, and I'll be more than happy to open it up for questions.
Chris, talk about your FDA approval and what you guys are trying to accomplish there. I think that's a big part of what you guys could potentially offer.
Correct. Yeah. So we have started the FDA process. We do have, for those that know the breadth and depth, the A through H type applications, we are set up now. We have FDA approval to bring in post-industrial material that is started as FDA and pushed it through FDA. And we have partial agreement to be able to take post-consumer, essentially like stadium trash, and be able to do that through an E through G approval. So our ultimate goal is to get FDA A through H for every material, and we really want it to be agnostic to it. Essentially what that is we have to take and essentially either spike material and prove that we can run it through. And we've been doing that for about 1.5 years. We don't control that. All we can do is give the data. Everything that we see and everything that we believe is we will be able to get FDA approval for all materials that we bring in and not have to specify or pull out FDA material from the front end. So it's a little bit of a journey, but the beauty of it is if we can get this, it opens up a world of applications, just like Jeff's mentioning, that you can't touch. We want this to be a high value, a value driven material that we can use in any FDA application. And that is our ultimate goal. And like I said, we're making good strides. It's just unfortunately doesn't happen overnight. Thanks, Jeff, for that question.
Yeah.
Real quick, this is very exciting, and thank you for sharing with us that the solvent is reused. What happens to the contaminants that are pulled out? I'll call it slag, for lack of better term.
Yeah, and I'll show you here. There's a bunch of different things when it comes to the contaminants, and the beauty of what we're trying to create is we want to close loop all those. So we have partners up in Canada and other places. They're taking samples of our waste material that comes out and essentially want to repurpose that, because we will get, I would say, some waxes and those type of things that come out. And what they're looking at doing is trying to repurpose those into tars and like asphalt singles and other type of applications for it. We also are looking at saying, how, if I go a rigid sort, how often can I pull out my PET? Can I pull out the HDPE and partner with others so we can reuse that material? So, our goal is to try to have every single material that we pull off is reclaimed and is at least repurposed. And that's really the big push for us. The one waste that's predominant out there, when we go through the process, polypropylene and polyethylene float when we clean it. So there's a decent amount of polyethylene that goes in, that comes off of our process. And what we're looking at doing is partnering with companies that would possibly put that into railroad ties or other applications that we could, reclaim that and have another second life for it. So like I said, we've been doing that homework here, I would say, for about the last year and trying to create a partner base to take that material. And it's kind of tough that we've just been small when it comes to running it on a pilot plant scale. So once we start getting bigger, we'll have a lot more volume and we can start finding some good homes for it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Sure. Yeah, speaking of the contamination, I mean, this is great. Once this thing's perfected, your gates are flooded, I believe.
Yeah.
But on the inbound side, the quality specs that you're looking for from a contamination rate, how tight are those? Are those pretty tight? What kind of contamination rate are you kind of looking at?
Yeah, so we are trying to go we're trying to be typical, if that makes sense, right? We're not trying to set a bar that's so high that we can't get raw materials in. And that's part of the reason I wanted to show this picture to you. We've invested quite a bit to take a standard MRF bale of material or a standard set of super stacks, and we're taking the ownership to pre-process it. So it's, we know a typical bale is probably in the 60 to 70% range for most number 5 bales that we've seen. And the idea here is that we will upgrade that material to give us the best potential to run in our process. I jokingly say I can put 50% bad into my process and run it, but I'm losing 50% of my rate. And I do not want to do that, right? So it makes much more sense for me to upgrade it. if you came in and told me you had a 90% polypropylene, I would probably pay you 2 cents more for that, that was on there. So we're more than happy to pay for that, but we understand the market. It's not easy for people to do that. So we've invested in the front end to try to help.
Thank you.
No problem.
You mentioned fiber and carpet, which is historically a very challenging material to recycle. Are you at the point where you can accept a carpet only load at your facility?
I have to utilize a partner for a carpet only load that's out there. So we have 2 partners. Unfortunately, most of them are out west because they get the subsidy and they're able to do that. If it's a true polypropylene carpet, that's something I could probably run in Ironton. But most of the time, what we've done is send it to a third party. And what they do is they have like a hammer mill where they can break the face fibers and get all the ash and the other contaminants that come out of it. So we have partners that do that first to try to make it a little bit easier for us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. But yeah, just ballpark, there's 4 billion pounds of carpet, right, that's out there that needs to be recycled. And almost every bit of that is going to have a polypropylene backing that's on there. I mean, polypropylene carpet is more commercial and it's probably only like 10% of that volume that comes in. And now everybody wants LVT on their floor. So it's, that changeover is there, but there's just a large volume that we want to be able to explore. And like I said, it's more of another upstream process that other partners have in place that they're running.
Did you have a question?
I have a couple of questions. So the first deals with the solvent.
Yep.
Which I think you touched on with Jennifer. So the solvent is something that cleans, so, and you're recirculating that.
Mhm.
And then you mentioned heat. So once, everything's kind of cleaned and segregated, then is it a distillation process, or could you speak to that a little bit more?
On the final, so I can, just going on the solvent, we do have a distillation column that cleans the solvent. That's how we can recirculate that when it comes in there. But what we do is, and maybe this is probably the easiest way to show, the polypropylene is dissolved, right? And we adjust the pressures and temperatures to essentially let it precipitate out or drop out. And then essentially that solvent will come off as a gas and I will cool it and I will reclaim it. And then my heavy polypropylene material will fall in as a melt. And then I take that melt, I put it through an extruder, I put it through a die plate, and then I make essentially a pellet out of it.
Okay, so it's the solvent that really is creating, it's the solvent heated then?
The solvent is heated as part of the process, yes. Mhm. And to get fairly technical, it's in a super critical range. So it's very hard to kind of explain that, it's in pressures and temperature that put it in there, but that gives it the flexibility to allow it to dissolve the material that we have in there. And then essentially we undissolve it.
Okay, got it. And then my last question is, will you be willing to share all of your recycling data with the EPA and turn it back to the districts? Annual district reports.
We'd have no issue with that. So and that's, to be honest, that is one of the biggest things we're really trying to do is transparency of where the material comes from and try to tie it all the way into the pellets. A lot of our customers are going to want that. A lot of our customers are very large consumer goods companies that are going to want to be able to show that transparency of where it comes from. So yeah, we're building that in. We're working at trying to be, one of the terms you'll hear our company uses called Born Digital, so that we can be as digital as we can up front. And that's going to be a lot of what we're trying to purpose. As soon as I put it in the front end, how do I follow that all the way through till we make the pellets?
Super, thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
I mean, a big thing is you go down your Kroger dairy section today, all that stuff that we buy is all virgin plastic. There's no post-consumer resin in any of it.
Right.
And the reason is that nobody in the United States can do what these guys are doing to make something valuable enough to go back into those things, products or containers that carry food that we ingest, right? Whereas a PET bottle, it's got FDA approval, it's much different, right? But polypropylene is so new on the horizon. And because of these guys, we were able to say, put your tubs and put your cups in the recycling bin. It's because of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a big deal.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. I mean, we really appreciate your guys' partnership too, because it's so nice that if you looked at that location, I mean, we're 2 hours from all of Jeff's locations, so we're in the perfect spot to be able to help. But just did want to add, Jeff, because you mentioned FDA. FDA for polypropylene is unique. And with our process, we are also unique. You know, we're not a chemical recycler that breaks it down. We're not a mechanical recycler, you know, that only heats it up. And the FDA only knows those processes, right? If they know that if you're going to break it down, it would probably eventually hit FDA because you're taking it back to a monomer. And they know on a mechanical side that you're bringing in, but you can only cherry pick, and essentially FDA in equals FDA out for mechanical. So we've spent a good amount of time trying to explain our process to the FDA to show that we are different, that we are accomplishing the same type of, you know, goals of what we would have as a chemical recycler. We're just not doing it as a chemical recycler. So that's part of the, I would say, unfortunate delay of trying to get that communication and clarity for people because we are so unique.
Chris, this is Chet Cheney. First of all, I want to thank you for taking time out of your schedule to make this presentation. But is there anything besides Marie's grants that Ohio EPA or Jobs Ohio can do for you all to progress even further than what you have done so far?
No, I appreciate it. I know like Jobs Ohio helped us actually re-roof one of our buildings. So I do want to put that out there. They've been a big help. You know, we even started, you know, early on trying to bring these things up. I think as we grow and as we learn and as we try to figure out how do we as a group capture more polypropylene in Ohio and how do we do that, that's where I think we would love to be able to get the help. I mean, there's a lot of places, you know, Jeff mentioned that they opened up tubs and lids for us just recently. And Jeff, I think that's only been in the last year and a half or so that we started doing that. So the way we could any way we could help promote that there is a viable home for polypropylene would be a help for us as we continue to try to grow that.
Hey, Chris, this is Mike Deneen. When do you think you're going to be up and fully operational? And then I guess along with that, how full do you think your capacity actually is with what you know of right now? How much more material do you need to attract?
So good question. I wish I had that, you know, magic bubble to tell you that it was going to be next week. But I mean, our essential goal is by the end of the year is to be up and running at full capacity. So that is our plan. And that's what we're moving forward to. We are going to start up here probably a little bit slower, kind of crawl, walk, run approach to get there. And that's what we've been utilizing kind of our partners to crawl. I feel like we have the ability to get the volume I need for the Ironton plant. The unfortunate thing is I probably have to go further away to get it, which is why I would much rather focus more locally and more regionally than having to go to the Southeast, the Northeast, or even West Coast to bring in material. So that's where I could use the help of how do we go ahead and improve regionally and more locally that we can bring material in. So I don't really have any concerns that I won't get the material. It's just I have to reach out, which unfortunately makes it more expensive for me to have to go ahead and get trucking to come in from, you know, further locations than I would like.
So if you had to say what you thought was available from Ohio, is that in theory 5% of your capacity, 95% of your capacity? What do you think that could be?
I would say it's probably in the 5 to 10% range of what we have right now, is what I would say the Ohio. And I don't want to just focus on saying that it's only this flake or mixed rigid post consumers, because there is a lot of super sacks. There's a lot of other materials, films and fibers out there that we could add in there. But yeah, we're probably targeting right now about 5 to 10%.
Plenty of room for growth.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's crazy when you think there's like 19 billion pounds of polypropylene just in North America, you know what I mean, that is out there, and we're getting less than 10% of that reclaimed, you know? So, and that's pretty common. And I think Ohio is better than a lot of other states too, with what's been promoted, but there's still lots of room to grow, you know, this whole concept.
That's question. Chris, Chuck DeAlker with Health Department. So the polypropylene, the FDA's concern is microbial or chemical leaching into.
It's more about leaching, you know what I mean? Because their standard is how many parts per billion could be in there, you know. So that's what we're trying to do, is to make sure that we have those keys, you know what I mean, key items removed. And it's it's very difficult, as I mentioned, because all that stuff is written for PET. So everything was done as PET. We're trying to create a standard to get approved for polypropylene. And so the other understanding is polypropylene absorbs a lot more than PET does. So like if I try to spike it with standards that are tied to, PET, it's different. So, but yeah, it's really, that's the biggest concern, is they want to make sure that there's no leachability going into, like Jeff meant, butter containers, yogurt containers, all your stuff in the dairy aisle. They want to make sure there's no leachability coming out.
Thank you.
No problem. And if you want to come help us with that, we're more than happy to.
Thank you very much.
No problem. Well, thank you guys for all you guys do in the background too. So, and appreciate the offer of help. And like I said, just the whole key I wanted people to take away is there's something in Ohio that's taking PP, and the more we can promote it, the better. And really appreciate what you guys do each and every day in the background. So thank you for your guys' time today.
Thank you, Chris.
Take care. Thank you.
Next up on the agenda, we have Julie Riley, who's the director of the Lucas County Solid Waste District. We hear a lot from the big parts in the state. We do have portions of the state that don't have easy access to processing, and in many times it's the public sector that picks that up. So we do have a number of public sector MRFs, and Lucas County is currently planning on becoming one of those. So Julie, are you online?
I am. I'm right here.
Julie,
Hello?
can you hear us, Julie? I can hear you.
I'm trying to share my screen with you. Okay. So thanks for asking me to do this presentation. I'm just going to give you a little overview of Lucas County to begin with. We're 596 square miles. We're right at the border of Michigan, for those of you that don't know where Lucas County is. Toledo is our biggest city. It takes up more than 60% of the population here. And we have 431,000 people that live in Lucas County. So it's kind of a big county, and the district is a single county district. We do a lot of different things. We hand out correct recycling information. We do specialty waste collection events, and we have recycling drop-offs, and we do e-waste, household hazardous waste. We partner with the University of Toledo for a business waste reduction assistance program. So any business that's looking to reduce the waste that's in their company, they can call UT and they'll come out and do an assessment for them and give them a report of, give them a report of how they can save money, save energy. And then our recycling drop-off locations, we have 143 drop-off sites. Only 21 of them are public. We have 52 schools, which the schools are mainly a school paper recycling program. And so it averages 2.38 miles, there's a recycling container in the county. We do it all with 6 drivers and 2 waste reduction specialists. And then the specialty waste programs, most of these collection events are done by Keep Toledo Lucas County Beautiful, which is our education partner. And so this year they did the Christmas lights. They've done pumpkins for the last several years. They've done the boat wrap recycling, and they started collecting styrofoam, but now Mercy Health received a grant from Ohio EPA to get a condenser, and they decided to partner up with Lot Industries. And so now Lot Industries has the styrofoam condenser, and now they're accepting the material instead of us. And thanks to Ohio EPA and with their advice and the grants that they've given us, we've been able to take some steps to get us to the point we are now, where we're trying to get this MRF in place. We were able to purchase some walking floor trailers and a compactor at the current transfer facility because our material is being shipped over to Oberlin, to Republic's facility, which is a 90-mile trip one way. So the shipping costs were outrageous with the top load trailers. So this has helped save about $500,000 of shipping. And this current transfer facility is right on the river, across from the casino. And the new location is going to be just right down the street from there, on the other side of the highway, but on the same side of the river. And we're partnering up with the city of Toledo, and they have committed all of their material to come to us. Verdantas is going to be the project manager. We received a brownfield grant in order to do an assessment of the property because it was an old dump. And so we did phase 1 and 2 of the assessments, and they decided it was feasible to build the MRF on this land. So we purchased 2 of the properties so far, and we're still working out some kinks with one of the smaller property, which is only about 1.5 acres. So total, we're going to have about 15 acres, and we're going to have a 60,000 square foot building. The goal is to have an education center in this building so that school groups can come and tour the facility and have hands-on learning about what a MRF does. We received a second brownfield grant, which is going to help remediate the land. So we received a $7 million grant with $2 million match funds, so a total of $9 million to just remediate the property. We've applied for a Swiffer grant. We've applied for a grant through Marcy Captor. We're still waiting to hear from both of those. We did hear that the Swiffer has moved to the next phase. And in the meantime, we've contracted with Tetra Tech to be the architect design firm for the building. And then the operator is going to be Closed Loop Partners, which is a division of Balcones. They're based out of New York, and we're really looking forward to working with them and getting this going. So all of the meetings that we're having in the future are going to include Verdantas, Tetra Tech, Closed Loop, and City of Toledo, so that everybody's on the same page and that everybody is putting in their opinion of what needs to be done. We don't know what equipment Closed Loop wants to use, so we're going to leave that up to them to decide. And then Tetra Tech is working with Closed Loop, so they make sure that they have the layout exactly working the way that they want it with the equipment that they're going to have. And Verdantas is pretty much the project manager for the remediation project. So this has been coming. I've been with the county for 30 years, and we've talked about this for at least 20 of them. So I'm pretty excited that this is finally going to happen. And do you have any questions?
I caught the 9 million in remediation. What's the total project cost?
The remediation itself is $7 million brownfield grant that we got, and then $2 million match dollars. And then the actual building is like 12 million, 15 million.
And the equipment?
The equipment I'm not sure about because Closed Loop Partners is providing the equipment. We are only going to own the building. They are going to operate it and own the equipment inside the building.
And also market the material, right?
Julie,
Julie,
I think maybe she's locked up.
I think they're gonna market.
They have any other operations in the state?
So Balcones is a Texas material recovery facility, mostly in Texas.
What is it?
Closed Balcones. Closed Loop Partners bought them a couple years ago, right after they bought Sims out of New York City. So Closed Loop Partners is becoming a player in our industry by buying up some of these recycling companies. Sims runs the largest MRF in North America in New York City, right? So they now own that. So yeah, so it's kind of a big deal what Closed Loop Partners is doing. So they have some dollars. They're going after these big, if the city has a giant municipal bid, they could come in and bid that and potentially operate a MRF there.
So are you aware, Jeff, if closed loop is providing the match funds?
I don't know the answer to
From
that.
the county?
I know
No.
that they're paying for
Can you
the,
hear me now?
there, you can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, no, the county, the district is providing the match funds.
Thank you. Thank you, Julie.
Sure. We actually have been planning on this since, as far as the financial side of it, we've been working towards it since 2014. We put rates and charges on all of the improved parcels in Lucas County. So every year, each improved parcel pays $5. So $2.50 a half on their tax duplicate. And so we've been saving that money up to try and put towards this MRF since 2014. So that brings us in about 700,000 a year just in the rates and charges.
Are you about 50 tons a day, Julie, up there?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Julie, are you guys also considering taking from other solid waste districts other than Lucas once you get up and running and? Are you
Yes.
looking? Okay.
Yep. And it's going to be open to surrounding communities, districts. Yeah. And we're also talking about putting a mini anaerobic digester on it for food waste from the employees.
And working with closed loop, did you set like capacity terms, you know, in order, as you guys went down the path of, you know, coming up with a solution for Lucas County, were there any, you know, capacity terms, or I guess in our world, it's kind of production numbers, daily, hourly, that kind of thing? Did you guys look at that, and can you share that with us?
Hey, we've told them that we've told them how much we currently bring in, but the transfer facility that is currently being operated, it's operated by the Coolman Corporation. They have people that run the front loaders that put it up in the compactor, but ultimately the contracts of the people who use the transfer facility is with Republic Services. So I don't know exactly how much material goes in because Republic has those numbers. But we've told Closed Loop what our numbers are. And they've been making phone calls trying to find out what the other numbers are so that they can plan for the future.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julie, for taking the time to present to us.
Sure, you're welcome.
I've been a planner in, forever. I've been here forever, and I've been to multiple plan review meetings with Lucas County where Toledo and Lucas have been talking about this. So I think, like Julie said, it's kind of exciting after all these years of them sticking with it, that they're actually going to see it come through. So thank you, Julie, for telling us about it.
Sure, you're welcome. Have a good day.
One question, and
Hold on
it,
just a moment, Julie.
the drop-off containers, some of them are private. I don't know that I've heard that from other districts before.
Julie, when you say private, you mean they're on like a business property, right? You service businesses with drop-offs, is that right?
Some, yes.
I think,
We talked to them about who their trash hauler is, and if their trash hauler does not provide recycling services, then we are willing to set a bin there. But for the majority, it's fiber material that we're taking from them.
Do those count in any way, shape, or form towards the goals?
only if they're
Yes.
publicly available.
Only if they're publicly
The
available.
material they collect does, yes. All the questions we have for Julie? Thank you, Julie.
Julie?
Sure. Thank you.
So up next, we're gonna put Beth Biggins Raymer on the hot seat. I think everybody knows about, I'm sure you've heard about Senate Bill 119, which it's been through multiple iterations, correct? And I believe right now it is we're on break.
Right.
So I don't know what'll happen in the future with it, but we asked Beth to kind of present to us from a SWATO's point of view what their opinion of it is or what your position is. So Beth, thank you.
Thank you. So there were several of the solid waste districts. SWATO created a subcommittee, and which incorporated, ourselves, Montgomery County, Stark Tuscaloosa, Deerfield, Licking, Perry, and I'm forgetting the other couple of districts, but we tried to create a subcommittee that represented kind of the complexion of the state for solid waste districts. And so Senate Bill 119 was put forth by Senator Reineke. And the initial bill was to address shredded or pulverized, unrecognizable waste that was being railroad into the Sunny Farms landfill, which is located in Seneca County. And his constituents in here are very concerned about that operation. So he put forth this legislation where initially the thought was, well, we will raise the state disposal fees on not only solid waste, but construction demolition debris quite a bit. For example, the state solid waste fee was going to go from $4.75 to $8.50 a ton. The idea was that hopefully these increased state fees would be a deterrent for that material coming in. The reason that Oswego put together a subcommittee is most every district went back and then began number crunching to see, well, you know, what would this impact be for, you know, our residents and our businesses if this state fee basically doubled. And, you know, what came out of that is, for example, I can speak to the city of Cleveland, was looking at over an additional $600,000 a year on the residential side. That didn't include any commercial or industrial entities in their footprint of $600,000. And they were a municipally run system. They most certainly didn't have an extra $600,000 sitting around that they could put towards these disposal fees. So our little subcommittee asked to meet with Senator Reineke. We had a set of talking points. We did have an opportunity to actually meet with him in person at the Capitol. We conveyed several concerns. We conveyed the fact that, you know, albeit we absolutely understood his concern for the situation in his particular county in a multi-county district, that correcting that on the backs of all residences and businesses within the state was going to have a rather negative financial impact. And, you know, that we highly recommended that he focus on that particular waste stream and trying to correct that specific problem. So after many iterations, and I think I'm going to show my age by saying this piece of legislation moved more quickly than anything I've seen in my 30 plus years in solid waste. You know, it was very interesting. It was illuminating. So ultimately, this piece of legislation went through 5 different iterations, some of which occurred, you know, a half hour, for example. There would be a new version released before a Tuesday agricultural committee meeting where they were going to hear more on that bill on this very new version that was released a half hour before. So we were very successful in staying in contact with Senator Reineke. Other interest groups within the state also joined our efforts, but you know, other institutional or kind of governmental entities, as well as the private sector, which we were all on the same page, which was a good thing to see. And I think that it really was heard by the senator that the fees were a bit exorbitant, and he did narrow his focus. The ultimate piece of legislation what that was presented is that the state solid waste fee was, and the construction demolition debris fee, correct, is staying the same cost. So the state solid waste fee is staying at the $4.75. Now that $4.75 is cut into different categories, and that $4.75 is distributed there was one minor change to the distribution of the 475, which we haven't heard too much repercussions on for that, but that 475 stayed whole. Now, we did, the other item in this bill that as solid waste districts, we had great concern about was the unilateral withdrawal of any specific county from the membership of a joint county solid waste district. And when I say unilateral, currently statute says if it is a multi-county solid waste district and one particular solid waste district is unhappy with that union, there is a process that one has to go through. And, such as, for example, sending a letter, your John letter saying, I'm unhappy, I want to withdraw. The other counties within that district have an opportunity to respond. Under current statute, if any of those other counties are unhappy, the process pretty much stops at that point. What is now sitting in Senate Bill 119 is that when one county says, I'm unhappy, sends that Dear John letter to the other counties in that solid waste district, there still is a time where those other counties can respond back. There's, both in writing, a meeting that is to occur. But at the end of the day, it pretty much is up to that specific county that sent the letter. So unlike the current response, where if there's any opposition from the other members of that union, that opposition is ineffective in stopping the single county that wants to leave from leaving. So basically, albeit that you have to go through a process, in the end, the county that wants to withdraw is given carte blanche opportunity to withdraw. The solid waste districts still have major concern with that language, and I'll come back to that point in a moment. So basically, after many iterations, the bill basically said, there were 3 points. We kept the fees intact. We provided for this unilateral withdrawal of a single district, or excuse me, a single county from multi-district. And then the third point was making permissible a tier fee. So in districts where there are landfills, there are tier fees. It's either 121 or 242. And the tier fee is, the first level is for waste coming from within that district to that landfill. The second tier is for waste going into that landfill from outside of the district, but within the state. And then the third tier is for waste coming into that landfill from out of state. And not to go into ancient history, but at least initially those fees were 1, 2, 3. After a challenge to interstate commerce, they became 1, 2, 1. And so in this version of Senate Bill 119 that passed, a solid waste district can choose to pass through RECDN. And this is the part that's not too terribly clear at the moment. What the process will be. We're assuming it would have to go through the same fee process that all fees have to go through for a solid waste district. But a solid waste district can choose to pass a tier fee structure for construction and demolition debris within their district, or those construction demolition debris facilities in their district. So for example, in Cuyahoga County, we have several construction demolition debris facilities. So if we so chose, we could pass this tier fee. And so the concept is the same. Construction demolition debris generated from within Cuyahoga County going to that facility in Cuyahoga County, or outside of the county, but within the state going to that facility, or outside the state. The caveat to that is that the district does not get to keep the money. They have to go through the process of ratifying that fee chain. They have to go through the bookkeeping process of collecting that money, receiving that money, but then they have to then distribute that money back to the local Ohio EPA Board of Health wherever that particular construction demolition debris facility is located. So for example, in Cuyahoga County again, we have two health departments that are approved by the OEPA. We have the Cleveland Board of Health, and then we have the County Board of Health. Obviously, you can understand those jurisdictions. So we would have to track all of the fees associated with materials going into those different construction demolition debris facilities. We would have to receipt those, and then we would have to remit those fees either to the Cleveland Board of Health or to the Cuyahoga County Board of Health, depending on the location of that construction demolition debris facility. So those three major components were what was finally passed by the Senate in Senate Bill 119. It was voted unanimously out of the Agricultural Committee, and it was unanimously approved by the Senate. And then nothing was associated with the budget bill, which we were very grateful for. There was a concern that some of this language might get tagged onto the budget bill. That was not the case. So right now, everything rests until everybody returns after summer break, at which point this will go before the House and this process will start again. And as solid waste districts, we still have concerns about the unilateral withdrawal of a single county district from, or excuse me, a single county from a multi-county district. And so we're kind of halfway through the process, not entirely through the process, and stay tuned. I can address any questions if you've got them. Hopefully it wasn't too muddy.
I believe Rachel, you're in the back of the room, right? Rachel Masugridi with County Commissioners Association of Ohio. Did you have anything you wanted to add, Rachel, or?
No, I mean, Beth did a great job summarizing our efforts through, I think it was, I don't know, 6-7 weeks of constant communication. So, yeah.
Thank you, Rachel.
I had to be involved in this too from a construction perspective. The tiered fees are still problematic for the construction side of things because they could effectively take the fee from $1.60 a ton to $5.60 a ton for out of district waste, which is still a significant increase. The other thing is there's not always a track of where that material comes from the way that it is today. The facilities don't track it. There are a significant number of procedural problems in the bill. One of which is that the conversion factors are not the same between the existing fees and the tiered fees. Tons to yards.
Yeah.
So
Cubic yards versus
there
tons.
becomes two different criteria there. So there's a lot of work to be done on this bill still. I think the way the unilateral withdrawal works or doesn't work, as the case may be, there's just a lot of procedural things that it's a complicated subject on all sides.
You further that point, from an infrastructure standpoint, we don't have the IT to track by city. Everything in every program has been built on counties. So for us, it's gonna be, I mean, we would have to gut our systems completely across the state. And I'm pretty confident every disposal facility in the state would have the same issues. Depending upon. It doesn't seem like a big switch. It's huge. It's huge. Millions.
Yeah, and as Rachel mentioned, this was kind of rapid fire over like a 7-week period, and it seemed like we would address one problem and then it was kind of whack-a-mole of legislation.
There's another piece in there that is kind of interesting. There was a discussion at one time, so a couple extra pieces. There's 2-3 municipal solid waste facilities that are in the state that accept construction demolition debris from outside the state that produce or dispose of as much construction demolition debris as the entirety of the state of Ohio. Okay, the facility that imports the majority of that material is the Catalyst as spoken by Senator Reineke. I'm not putting words in his mouth. That's what he said the catalyst was for all of this. Because those are MSW facilities, not construction demolition debris facilities, those facilities have the option currently to choose the fee that they charge, whether it's municipal solid waste or the construction demolition debris fee, if it's on construction demolition debris. They can choose not to charge the C&D fee, and anything that comes in the gate gets the MSW fee. There was a discussion, again, with the rapid fire system, that says there was a possibility that said, just take that permissibility away, because the majority of the construction demolition debris does not go into an MSW facility. Just make it, if it goes into an MSW facility, carte blanche, it gets the higher tiered fee. That will effectively achieve the goal of increasing the fees on the imported material. That was not done that way. It was basically done that it was no longer permissible to choose which fee was there. It's now regulatorily required in 119 that you determine which material it is and apply the appropriate fee. So, for example, if you took material into a transfer station, you could theorize that if you get charged the MSW fee, that's an overtax, and you in theory should be you should get a refund of that additional or change in fee, as the case may be. So there are some, again, procedural problems that could be problematic. It really happens if things get misappropriated. Let's say I take something down to SWACO does their fees. They don't charge a C&D fee. Well, according to 119, they're required to charge a C&D fee now, if they had chosen not to in the past. So from a construction demolition debris association perspective, we still have some significant conversations that need to happen, because some of these procedural things are showstoppers for all intents and purposes.
A lot of detail, and we tried to convey, our subcommittee had put forth an idea that really would target this very specialized material, as Michael's saying, that really just goes into these 3 facilities in the state. That we thought, well, you know, if that is the problem, target that issue and see where it goes. And that is not, that didn't get incorporated into the final piece of legislation. And even based on how the fee is currently proposed, you know, knowing the majority of this material is coming from the East Coast, and based on their fee structure, even with what is currently in the bill, I don't, you know, as solid waste districts, I don't think any of us on the subcommittee thought that that was going to be a remote deterrent to stop that flow. Now, you know, we have to be cognizant of not impeding interstate commerce, but you know, the idea is if it's a specific material type, maybe it should be addressed as thus, but so that's where it stands. Michael's right. There's a variety of details that need to be clarified. And for example, with the divorce situation, the reason that the statute is written currently the way it is for a county wanting to withdraw from a multi-county district is it's not just revenue. It's not just taking the bank account and then deciding, well, do you divide that by population or by generation of the materials or what? But there could also well be debt. I mean, you know, you've got some of these multi-county districts that have, you know, invested with OWDA loans or whatnot, and they own facilities. Well, how are you going to, you know, divide that? So there's still a whole laundry list of things that I think all folks interested still are worried about.
So I don't know that this group doesn't necessarily have an opinion at the moment. I don't think the agency has an opinion at the moment yet either. But it is for those involved in the solid waste districts and the waste industry, it's something that still needs to be monitored and watched closely.
Our subcommittee will. Taking a minor breather over the summer. We'll be poised to be back at it in the fall, so.
Yeah, this is, there's a specific reason for 119, and it's having a significant impact on places that are not the intended change. So. Any other questions, comments?
I just say thanks, Beth, for assembling the subcommittee. I've utilized the information you guys have been utilizing, so grateful.
The subcommittee was great and we truly appreciate, we had open lines of communications with a large number of folks who, construction, demolition, debris, private sector. One of the few times we were all like on the same page. So.
I do have a question for Beth. Beth, do you know where in the house it's going to, who's going to be sponsoring it or where it's going to be introduced?
I may
You want me to?
want to.
So it has not been referred to a committee yet in the House. I just checked to make sure that that hadn't happened in the last couple weeks. And so we don't know which committee will be hearing it. It's still a Senator Reineke bill. There is not a House version that was introduced. The fact that the House had not seen any of these provisions is probably a big reason why it didn't actually none of them made it into the budget, because the House hasn't really heard this at all. So it'll still be the same bill. We just don't know the committee yet.
So moving on to our next agenda topic, we've had multiple discussions at meetings regarding communication efforts for what can and can't be put in your recycling bin, particularly focused on when there's a change in the material mix. And so we had formed a subcommittee to kind of discuss developing some best practices for how to get the message out to people when the material mix does change. We've met, we have 3 members, maybe 4 from MAC who are sitting on the, Jeff, Beth, Marcy, and Michael all sit on that subcommittee. We've met twice, and the first meeting was really focused on kind of learning from everybody. We had some of the waste companies, we've had the solid waste districts involved in that as well, just trying to learn kind of what people do up to this point. The second meeting was really focused more on trying to understand what direction that the group is going to kind of recommend going, such as deliverables. Part of at the end of the day, part of the problem has been that we haven't really had all of the major players involved. So at this point, I think what we're looking at from the agency's perspective is trying to reach out in some way to them individually to kind of get more discussion started. There's questions about when you have them all in the room together, are there issues with their discussions and stuff like that? So that's where we stand right now, at least in terms of what we've done up to this point. I've asked Jeff, Beth, Marcy to kind of give their perspective on what the discussions are. So if you guys don't mind chiming in and just your perspective, what the discussion looks like, where you think we're going, what you think needs to happen, and that'd be great. So whoever wants to.
I can go if you want me to,
Go
but,
ahead.
yeah. When you think about an acceptable item being added to the bin, right, for all intents and purposes, 2 things have got to happen. It's got to run through the 5 major material recovery facilities in the state. Got to run through their equipment, right? WM's equipment is different than Rumpke's. Rumpke's is different than Kimball's. Kimball's is different than Republic, right? It's all different. Do you have to have space for that commodity when you add it? So it has to run through there and you have to kind of get it, because I don't care if Rumpke can run polypropylene, but if Kimball can't run polypropylene because they don't have a place to put it, they can't run it, right? They can't say put it in the bin because where they, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is that they have to have an end market for it. We have to have an end market for it, right? Which I think that's the easier part of the process. In markets are, I mean, it's not, I mean, you knew who PureCycle was. I mean, it wasn't a secret, right? So the in-market part, I think, is the easier part. The harder part is the infrastructure to run the material through your facility. So I think that's one part. The second part is that you need to have, if I want to make a decision to put Pringles cans in the recycling bin at Rumpke, I can do that next week. Okay. I'm not gonna do that. But if WM or Republic, because they're national companies, right, want to make that decision, it affects all of their potential facilities, right? It's just not a standalone MRF or two standalone MRFs where, so it's a much bigger animal that they have to tackle. Than just a smaller MRF or a smaller company like Rumpke, right? So I think that's another part of it. So I think that's a struggle for them as well. So I think those two things, and Aaron, you can back me up or say what you want to say here. But I think those two things, right, are the struggles.
Yeah, it's gotta be recoverable and marketable. And it's gotta be scalable.
I agree. So I guess what I'm telling you is that I think we can have a conversation. I think the appropriate approach is that the Ohio EPA continues to have individual discussions with the major MRF operators in the state. And then during that discussion, I think it should be asked, can we all get together based off of that information and be able to have a discussion around acceptability? Again, this is not saying what we're being paid for the material. This is not saying who we're selling the material for. It's really about why is it acceptable at WM and it's not acceptable at Rumpke, or it's acceptable at Rumpke and it's not acceptable at WM, right? For example, right? Why is that?
Why in Texas and not in Ohio?
Why in Texas? Why not? And that's an in-market, right, thing. So, anyway, so that's kind of the conversation that needs to be had. But I think it needs to be had individually first, and then bring us back together as an infrastructure and be able to talk about it together. That's my opinion. I don't know how you feel, Beth.
And in our discussions, we, so that was kind of a point that, we as solid waste districts heard. We also, from our perspective, it's a communication issue. So, in these conversations to come, what we're hoping to get out of this is, for example, and I'll pick on Cuyahoga County again, we have all 4 private haulers, well, actually now a 5th one. That are in our area, all of which, Jeff's point, based on their equipment, they collect differently. And, so we've responded by adjusting our webpage. So, we've drilled it out to community, but, to kind of come up with a solution for the entire state, part of one of the things we were talking about was how can we create that structure, so when, let's say, Rumpke and Waste add, and we're all for adding materials. That's the first thing I want to say is none of us wanted to, stop the progress of materials being able to be collected. It's how can we get that information from the privates, get it disseminated throughout the state, because it's not, it's really, to Eric's point, it's not even district to district, right? I mean, so for example, it's kind of regional effects based on where your material, your MRF shed, where it blows into that shed. And there's also then this level of contracts, because not only do you have the MRF shed level where the materials are, whatever they're collected, but then you have timing of individual contracts, so for example, the city of Cleveland had a contract that'll be coming up, within the next several months for recycling. So that'll be a changeover possibly versus, Brooklyn, their contract may be holding in place for another 4 years. So it's being able to, for the district to kind of be that clearinghouse to be able to get the latest and greatest information down to that granular level. And how do we achieve that? So is that through, for example, some kind of annual survey, that maybe the EPA manages, where they send it to, each of the MRFs that have MRF sheds in Ohio. It would be burdensome, because then, for example, like big, Waste and Republic, who are national, they'd have to then kind of, well, even Rumpke did that to some point. They'd have to kind of chop it up and say, okay, now take this survey and, MRF shed in the Northwest, North shed in the Northeast, fill it out accordingly, get it back, send it to Ernie. But anyway, so we've just begun talking about that, but and the other difficult thing to address is, so there's the kind of the operational point, is then how do all of the privates communicate that to customer service? And how do you link customer service and their messaging, with the district? The flow chart's more like an octopus
The bottom line is you want everybody that lives in Cuyahoga County to know what's recyclable and what's not
for their community,
for their
right?
community.
Right.
And I think you had a great idea, Michael, that we talked about last time.
So I kind of view myself somewhat as the individual that's outside the mix anyways. And with the risk of being blunt, all the stuff that you guys just talked about, I really don't give a crap about. I don't care. I don't care that there's a contract for this city and not a contract for that city. It doesn't matter to me. When I'm trying to teach my kid how to put the stuff in the container, it literally does not matter.
That's right.
At all. Okay, so what we're trying to do is, the whole thing came up because you guys wanted to add some stuff to it, and you tried to put it through the system that says, hey, I want to add this, and the system went, oh crap, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do it efficiently. I don't know how to do it without playing the telephone game. I don't know how to do it without everybody not knowing what the heck's going on. Which means there has to be, for lack of better terms, you have to eliminate the telephone game so that there's only one source of information. Not from the districts, not from the private haulers, not from anybody else. It's got to be from the company and the physical location that is doing the processing. The rest of it doesn't matter. What I thought about was, if we could figure out how to require, most of them do it anyways, require a website of some sort from each particular MRF that says exactly what that MRF does, then it could be part of the contracts for the haulers that say, I've got a container on the curb, or I've got a drop-off container, put a QR code on the side of the container that says, this is where you go. We can't get into a football game without one of these anymore.
No kidding.
You can't get into a concert, you can't get into a football game, you can't go anywhere with it. Okay, that same webpage, the districts could use to drive everybody to. I live in this district or this contract area. It's going to point you to a Rumpke website or a Kimball website or a Lucas County website for all intents and purposes. But if everybody has a consistent across Ohio, there's a QR code on there that takes you wherever that container goes. Is there going to be a problem with it because somebody picks up a container and takes it over to the next city, or somebody picks up a front load container and takes it someplace else? Absolutely. You're going to have that. But I think it's going to be a heck of a lot better if you cut out all the middle people for all intents and purposes and say there's one source of information, period. And at that point, it doesn't matter what material is being recycled or not recycled. I know there's some contractual things in there that I really, to this day, still don't understand why they're still there. Because you as a city can say recycle this, but they don't have an outlet for it. It doesn't matter. They're not going to do it.
I know in our district, we're trying to stop that. It's just a bad habit from, years and years of.
we have history and that's what does it. But if there's something to be said for, let's come up with a game plan of what can be started to add into these contracts of how's this done? I mean, my wife's got one for some, I don't even know what the heck it's for, but it's a QR code, but the QR code stays the same. Information changes, it will. So, and that would be my 2 cents for probably 10 cents. What the actual thing is, the concept is. And I appreciate getting into the weeds because I'm a weeds type of person anyways. But I think we have to be really careful with that here because even in the conversations that I listened to, we got into the weeds of what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. None of that, that's not, this purpose is just for purely for communication. How do we get the right information to the people? We can argue about what should be recycled or not recycled later, and that communication will allow you to, once you're done with that argument, say this is what gets recycled and this doesn't get recycled.
Many of us are digitally aware of everything, right? And that's what our lives are all about, is the digital part. But I'm representing the municipalities, and there's a lot of people who are still not digital in the municipalities. And to keep our contamination down, I know it's going to cost the haulers a little bit of money, but every time there's a change, put that sticker, get that sticker to that home for them to put onto their containers so they can keep it really simple. If it's on that container, it goes into this container. If it's on this container, it goes into this container. Just keep it simple.
How often does it change?
Not very.
So it changes.
Until you get somebody like a Pure Cycle comes into the state, right? You're just like, oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
think
know.
also we're at a time where this is really timely because most of the haulers are now upgrading facilities, right? Everybody's going through some pretty big, good size retros and new developed sites. And therefore, we're taking the opportunity to upgrade, right? So there's some tolerances that are changing as a result of it right now, so. Not often, right? Because you have a huge capital investment and that's what you're stuck with for a while, so.
If I may, I agree the simplicity of what you said, but I think the committee's discussion is helpful in trying to get us to that. A lot of openness on the challenges of those mixed messages, which in the solid waste plan, solid waste districts are charged with educating. This is part of what MMAC has to monitor. They are charged with that responsibility, but there are a lot of challenges in making that uniform and simple. So I would also propose centralized as well. And you mentioned the sticker. I would suggest, I think changing stickers is challenging for anybody as an education piece, but a centralized place, whether it be on a cell phone number or a website, would achieve a similar goal, because it does change, and all of us want the change when things are good and bad. But talking about why it's not like that is helpful in the committee to try to remedy those issues.
This is probably one of those things, just like the contamination reduction grant. Once we get through this, it's going to be extremely beneficial.
A lot of people happy.
And we just, I think it was Mayor Coleman that, yeah, I'm sure other people have used it, but the idea of low hanging fruit. We can't fix the whole problem. Let's fix half or 3/4 of it. Let's see if we can get well on our way and then kind of bolt on it. So, and that's what we've been good at here, doing that. So.
Is there any other discussion the group wants to have on that at this point? So we just need to come up with a game plan for talking the other companies. Kind of a challenge because some don't deal with us. So, we'll do what we can do to work with the ones that we can. So we're coming up with a game plan still. We'll be back once we have a better idea of how we're going to move forward. So I think we're at the end of our agenda. Our next meeting is, I guess we have a public comment period. So if there's anybody who's on on participating virtually who has questions or wants to address them. This is kind of the time in our meeting where we open up to give you that opportunity. So if you do want to address Mac in some way, just raise your hand and we'll recognize you. Seeing any. So I guess our next meeting is September 20th. We will be in this room again. If you have agenda items that you would like us to see, please let us know. There will have some follow-up on a few of the topics that we've already discussed. So, be in touch with us if you have something that that you'd like to have discussed here.
Anything else for the group? Thanks, everybody. Can we go home?
Moved.
Second.
Thank you.
That was very